In this video, I'm going to share with you the ultimate guide to home defense. Lethal and non-lethal options, the pros and cons of both, the benefits you need to know about, how to think through what to select, what's right for your family. We're going to talk about all of that. But here's the deal. When it comes to prepping, there's so many things you need to have in place, from food to water to long-term sustainability. But if you've done all of that and you put all those things in place, you can lose it in an instant if you've not thought about home defense. So in this video, we're going to unpack everything you need to know so that you have the confidence to have the peace of mind, so that in the moment when that moment might come, you know that you have what you need to protect your family and you're confident in what you have. All of that is coming up. All right, guys, so there are so many different things that you need to have in place when it comes to prepping. But again, if you put all those things in place, but you've not thought about this critical item, which is home defense, you can lose it all in an instant. So let's talk about what you need to think about so that you are prepared. You are ready when that situation could come up, and you know that you've got what you need. So as always on this channel, we dive into the Reddit threads. We begin to look at the information that rises to the surface in these prepping survival threads, and we learn from it. So let's do that. So when it comes to the Reddit threads, we looked at a few this time. So number one, in this prepper subreddit, the question is what to use for home defense. And the thought is, I can't own a gun, crossbow, or bow. So that's kind of funny. We're going to talk about non-lethal here first, and then we'll look at another subreddit here in a second. So what rose to the surface? What were the trends in this particular thread? And we see here, there was a lot of suggested options. We could talk about everything from dogs and animals to baseball bats and non-lethal, taser, pepper spray. These are some key items. We'll talk about these here in a minute. They, of course, are hitting on some alarm systems and camera options, good doors and locks. There's a lot of different things on here, but some really key items rise to the surface. These are your non-lethal options, okay? Let's also look at another subreddit that asks the question, best weapons for when SHTF situation happens. I'm new to this whole prepping thing, and one of my weakest areas would be self-defense. I was wondering if someone could recommend some different types of firearms that would be best. So now we're going to look at the firearm options. Let's look at this one. Suggested weapons for an SHTF situation. You got your AR-15, a Glock 19, a 12-gauge shotgun, and on the list, a 9mm handgun on there, a Mossberg 500. There's some good options on here. We're going to talk about both lethal and non-lethal options. We're going to talk firearms. In fact, we're going to dive into that topic first. But before we do that, let's talk about this. The idea of a home defense video that's the ultimate guide. It's a critical aspect of personal safety, first of all, right? But it's also a critical aspect of preparedness. We've already talked about why. So selecting the right weapon for home defense, there's some options to consider here. There's some factors to consider here, right? And so that's the ease of use, the stopping power, and then also what is right for your family. You need to think through each one of these items, and that's what you're going to want to think through as you look at this list that we're coming up with, the pros and cons of each, and it's going to help to cover a range of home defense weapons, pros and cons, benefits, other factors to consider on each one. So without further ado, let's dive in and begin to look at these together. So we're going to start with the topic of firearms. And within that category of firearms, we're going to talk handguns. Okay, so pros of handguns. They are compact, they're easy to maneuver in tight spaces, and available in various calibers. Now, on the other side, cons. They require practice for accuracy. They're going to have that risk of over-penetration, so there's that collateral if it does penetrate and you do hit the mark. Even then, there's still a risk of it hitting something else, right? So there's benefits here, though. It's easy to store, easy to conceal, and it's suitable for a quick response situation. But there are some other factors to consider. We want to make sure that you have every piece of information. Regular training and practice is going to be needed to maintain proficiency. So not just on the front end to learn how, but you're going to want to be proficient over time and have regular practice. So that's going to be a factor on the front end. Make sure that you've got that so that you're up to date and you're confident you can use the weapon correctly. Ensure safe storage to prevent unauthorized access can be really important in a family situation. So some popular options here, we're going to look at three. The Glock 19, the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield is a popular option, and then finally the Sig Sauer P320. So Up to you which one you pick, but I just want to present to you some popular options for handguns. We're going to go on a high level view on this video and just give you options in each category. Okay, let's move on to the next category, which is shotguns. And within the shotgun category, the pros: high stopping power. This is an intimidating deterrent, and it's versatile ammo options, both lethal, and then we can talk about some non-lethal options. We'll get to that here in a little bit. Cons: larger size, and so it can be cumbersome or overwhelming, and it's got a significant recoil. So benefits here: effective for short-term range defense. It can be loaded with non-lethal rounds. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Other factors to consider: recoil can be challenging for some users. If you're not prepared for that, practice is going to be needed for effective handling. All right, so let's look at at three right now, popular choices for this one. Okay, so there's the Mossberg 500. We've got the Remington 870. And then the Benelli M4. So up to you. You're going to have to do some deeper research into which one, but I want to present you with a few options. Now, when it comes to the firearm category, I've got one more subcategory for you, and that is rifles. So within the topic of rifles, pros: high accuracy, they're powerful, you've got long range capability. Now, having said that, there are some cons. There's over-penetration risk here, and larger size, it may be less maneuverable. But this is going to be the item you're probably going to pick for a rural setting or larger properties, and so it's going to be really helpful for having that excellent precision over a longer distance. But some other factors to consider here: there is the over-penetration that can pose a risk to bystanders. So again, you're going to want to be well-versed and confident in how to use the weapon. And it's often going to require more space for storage and some of these other options, so something to consider. Again, let's look at three popular choices. We'll let you do the research, but there's the AR-15 as a popular choice. You've got the Ruger Mini 14 and the Kel-Tec Sub 2000. Okay, so having looked at some lethal options, we want to give you a full spectrum of options. Let's look at non-lethal weapon options now, and we'll start with pepper spray. So pepper spray: pro, easy to use, it's effective as a disabling option for an attacker, it's non-lethal. Cons: limited range, it can affect the user if not careful. So you may be aiming to use it on somebody else, but it can actually affect you. Benefits: it's portable, it's easy to carry, immediate incapacitation of threats, provided you use it correctly, right? Other factors to consider: wind and other environmental factors that can affect its use, right? And so it's going to require close proximity to the attacker as well to make sure that it's used correctly. So you have to get really close to that person that you are wanting to defend against. So there are a couple of popular choices on this one I want to highlight to you. Again, up to you to decide and filter through, but you've got the Saber Red as an option, and then the popular Mace brand pepper spray as an option. Okay, so within the non-lethal category, that was the subcategory of pepper spray. Let's move on and talk about stun guns and tasers. Okay, so within stun guns and tasers, there are some pros and cons, and I'm not going to break down the difference between stun guns and tasers on this one, but know that there is a slight difference. We'll talk about it in another video. But pros: easy to use, it's effective at disabling attackers without permanent harm, and easy to use. I already said that. Yeah. Cons: requires close proximity for use, and it's limited to a single use or short duration. So you want to make sure that you hit the person that you're aiming at, right? Benefits: it can be effective as a non-lethal option, and it is legal in many jurisdictions, whereas some of these other options may not in certain municipalities, right? So you're going to want to research that, but this is an option that can work in many different circumstances, okay? Other factors to consider: it requires direct contact or close range, and effectiveness can vary with clothing and body size of the attacker. So you may not know the size of the person that you're up against, and given that, or the thickness of their clothing, that can be a factor in how effective this actually is. Let's look at a couple of options here. We'll look at two this time. The ViperTech BTS 989. So you see the size there in comparison to a Sharpie. And then the Taser Pulse. Again, I'll let you do the research on that, but that does give you some options to get you started. All right, beanbag rounds. So I told you we'd talk about this as well. Pros: non-lethal. They can be fired from a standard shotgun, and they've got a high stopping power. Now, on the other side, cons: going to require you to have a shotgun, right? So you're going to have to invest in that and then have it around the house. Risk of serious injury at close range. Now, benefits here. This offers a less lethal alternative to traditional ammunition, and it can incapacitate without lethal force. So if you're looking for that option that can get the job done and incapacitate without lethal force, this might be your option. But other factors to consider, it's going to require very specific, specialized training to make sure you're proficient in it for effective use, so something to consider. And then there is a risk of causing serious injury if it's not used properly. So popular choices here, I've got a couple for you. These are the types of rounds. We've got defense technology rounds, and then also the ALS technologies round. Okay, so within this, let's talk about one more category here. We've got bladed weapons. I want to talk within bladed weapons on several subcategories. We'll talk knives first. So when it comes to knives, pros, no ammunition required, versatile, utility, and of course they're quiet versus a very loud firearm. Cons, on the other hand, you're going to have to get pretty close to somebody. So requires very close combat, risk of injury to the user, right? Benefits, multi-purpose tool for survival situations. You can use it for other things, right? No need for ammunition to carry around. You're going to be able to count on it over time without having to worry about replacing ammunition. Other factors to consider, though, you're going to have close range defense, and that can be dangerous. And it's going to require skill and confidence to use it effectively. You don't want to use it without confidence, don't want to use it without skill, right? So let's look at 3 potential options here for you to consider, and that would be the K-bar. Very popular knife, probably the most popular in this category. K-bar, the Gerber Strong Arm is there as well, and then the Spyderco Endura. So I'll let you research more intensely on that one. The K-bar is by far the most popular. Let's talk about another popular subcategory of the machete. So as a machete, the pros here, we're talking about effective in close combat. It can be intimidating and can be used for various tasks. Cons, on the other hand, it's going to require strength, going to require skill to use correctly, and it's limited to close range. Benefits, though, dual use for defense and outdoor tasks, which can be really helpful in survival, and it's also very visually intimidating just to look at it. Okay, but other factors to consider, you're going to have to be pretty physically strong to be able to use the machete correctly and have skill, and so it's best suited for those that are comfortable with bladed weapons. All right, but let's look at 3 potential options here. We're talking about the cold steel Kukri, I think is how you say it. I'm not familiar with machetes, so I'm guessing on that one. The Gerber Gator, this is from my research. And then finally, we'll talk about the Kershaw Camp 10. These 3 rose to the surface in my research. I'll let you do your own. I think these are a good starting point, though, from the different subreddits I've looked at and other resources, okay? So let's talk about, having talked about those categories, I do want to make sure that we also talk about what you already may have on hand. So I told you in this video we would touch on some other options that may surprise you. Let's talk about those now. Let's talk about improvised weapons. This is a whole category in and of itself. And within this, there are some pros to this. They're readily available. You're probably going to have them around your house, easy to use, and non-lethal. That may check all your boxes. Cons, though, you're going to probably require physical strength and have a limited range. But benefits here, simple, effective for close range defense, and a non-lethal deterrent. Other factors to consider, however, you're going to have limited range here. Effectiveness is going to really depend on the user's strength and the user's ability, whereas some of these other options don't require that, and mostly you're just point, aim, shoot. You're able to get the job done not without really depending on your own skill and aptitude. So let's look at a couple of popular options here. I mean, really, we're talking like a Louisville Slugger, like a bat, right? Or potentially, that was the only one I had on that one. So aluminum bats as well, another popular one. Household items. Okay, so there are also household items you're going to have around your house. Let's talk pros and cons on this one. Pros are accessible in emergency situations. You're going to have them on hand, and they can be used creatively, right? Cons, they're going to vary in effectiveness, and they're not specifically designed for defense, but they could be used in that way, right? Benefits here, convenient, readily available, and they can be used as a surprise element to surprise, right? But other factors to consider, they're not as reliable as dedicated defense options, and their effectiveness really can vary pretty widely. And I do just want to mention these potential options here for you. Yes, the frying pan is not just for cartoons. You actually could use this as a defense item in a situation. At least be aware of it to have it on hand. A broom handle, just like Mr. Miyagi, right? Or a heavy flashlight. These three options could be really helpful in a given situation, right? Okay, so choosing the right weapon, though, having thought through and seen all of those with the pros and cons, here's what you're going to need to think through. Assess the needs within your particular context, your home. So consider the layout of your home. Think about who else lives in your home, your children. Are there older family members or elderly people that are living nearby that you need to consider as you assess these options? And then also, you're going to want to make sure to assess and evaluate your own comfort and skill level and your willingness to commit to ongoing training in whatever item you may choose. And so also, yeah, there's that training dynamic. You're going to want to train. You're going to want to practice to make sure that you are ready and prepared with these particular items. And then, of course, finally, we have to talk about safety considerations. And that's where you're going to want to make sure that you're securing these items in a safe lockbox, especially firearms, and especially if you've got children in your home, and then use non-lethal items as a first line of defense if possible, I would suggest. And always have a plan to rehearse different scenarios so that you are ready in any given situation. So home defense, it's about preparation. It's about having confidence in the items that you have on hand that will get the job done for your particular situation. Hit us up in the comments. What do you have on hand? What do you consider to be top notch for home defense? What will you not be without? We want to hear from you. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. All of that tells us, hey, we're on to something with this channel. Give me more of this content. We'll see you next time.